know your opponent. I've heard this statement from dairy producers before. It's all about evaluating a threat at hand, managing the risk, and being prepared to act with urgency. And the opponent we are talking about today is the one that is on everyone's minds, H5N1. If you want to hear from someone who has been helping dairies deal with this disease since the very beginning, who can tell us what to watch for, ways to reduce risk, and what to have in your arsenal to be ready to take action should your dairy be facing the fight, keep on listening to this episode of the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. This is the podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will uplevel your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. From the front lines of H5N1, Randy Tapia has been assisting dairy producers in the Southwest and across the country as they deal with the disease firsthand or are preparing themselves for the potential of sickness hitting their herds. Randy grew up in the Texas dairy business, with his father at one point running 9,000 cows on 3 dairies near San Angelo, and he also spent many years as a dairy manager up in the Panhandle. He was an early adopter to rumination monitoring and other technologies as a dairy manager and ended up stepping away from that role to work in the dairy tech side. He now is with Micro Technologies based out of Amarillo in a dairy solutions role today. And in this conversation, I've asked Randy to put his dairy manager hat back on and walk us through what to watch for, some of the red flags showing up with rumination monitoring, reducing risk factors, especially around waterers, and fast action that dairy producers can take to make adjustments to the ration and support cows in getting back on track. And Randy tells us how he would be preparing his team and what would be stocked in his medroom if he was still a dairy manager right now. Hear from a former dairy manager himself who's been on the front lines of H5N1, Randy Tapia. You spent your whole life in dairy. Is there anything that you would say in your dairy experience that has been comparable to the events that we're in right now?
So I could compare this to back when we were dairying here in San Angelo, Texas, when we had our own dairy. So TB was very prevalent back in the 07, 08, 09. I had already left my father's dairy, but in 09, my dad was hit with TB on his dairy farm. And so it's very similar. And OTB don't want to speak too much about it other than we've typically eradicated it. But back then it was more prevalent. And it's kind of what I see is going on now, even with the latest news that essentially having to test for the H5N1 on any movement that's going through the dairy. Cows were having to be tested, and you saw that back in 09, 08. From my perspective, it's pretty comparable to then. So if guys who are out there right now who still were in the industry, they probably bring in memories back for them as well. Yeah, definitely a very comparable moment.
So you, being personally located in Texas, you've been in an interesting spot geographically for the last few months as things started to develop in your region around what we've now come to know as the H5N1 virus. What's that been like for you?
A lot of unknowns, right? We all knew what the cows were doing. We just didn't know why. And so just really trying to put things in place to treat what was going on the cow side, the symptoms that they were presenting, and just really trying to get a handle on that. Being with Micro, we have technologies that are able to bring solutions to these type of issues with the dairymen. And some of the technologies they already have, really just maximizing the technologies that they have in place and helping them use those technologies to be more proactive with this as much as possible.
So put your dairy manager hat on for a moment and your tech hat. So you had the ability to look at what was coming up on rumination monitoring technology as you were starting to troubleshoot dairies in your region and far beyond. So just speak for a moment to the power of activity monitoring and rumination monitoring technology as these problems started to emerge in your area.
So essentially what we've seen is rumination tends to go first. Quick drop in rumination is what's help the dairymen be more proactive on finding the cows and treating the cows before they get to the point of no return, essentially. The technology piece has reporting. So the alerts that come up, you got 5 50 cows on your health report one day and 100 cows on the next day, that's a big alarm, right? So guys start looking at, hey, what's going on? This isn't normal. So those type of reporting and those type of technologies has definitely been a driver to help these dairymen help minimize the impact that it has on the farm.
So you were able to look at some of that data that was being collected and start to notice some of those shifts and changes. Randy, I want you to really speak to the dairy producers out there that have not been impacted yet, that maybe have rumination monitoring technology already in play. What can they be looking for? What should their red flags be that there may be a threat to their dairies?
If you have an idea of how many cows come onto your health report on a daily, weekly basis, when that starts essentially overnight, within a few days, double or triple, then you know there's something's really happening. That's typically where we first started looking, is like, okay, why is this happening? That's when we found out H5N1 was the culprit to a lot of that. That's kind of one of the first things that I would look at. So like group reporting, if you have any type of group reporting, looking at rumination graphs or a line graph, even looking at how many minutes of rumination your herd's at. If it goes from, just an example, if it goes from 500 to 450 overnight, then, or 425 rumination minutes, that could be a good indication of, hey, this is what's going on. So just be really cognizant. Even if you don't have monitoring technology, it seems like intakes drop down really quick as well. It's been happening on late lactation cows. So definitely look at those groups in your late lactation. Keep an eye, because typically on the health side, most of those cows, you don't ever see them on a health report. So if you start seeing late lactation cows creep up on a health report, then it might be time to be looking further into if it's the virus affecting your dairy.
So those are some of the red flags that those dairies that have monitoring technology can really be looking at as a signal to pay attention and to take a closer look at what might be going on. Again, like you said, in those late lactation pens, where typically those cows wouldn't be the ones that are showing extreme deviation or showing up on your list. But in this case, that's the group that we hear is impacted the most, is those cows that typically aren't our problem cows.
Correct. Yeah. Typically, late lactation cows, they're in cruise mode until they're getting to the point of being dried off. But yeah, it seems like those cows are the ones being affected the most.
So rumination is one area that we're touching on today, Randy. And again, I want you to keep speaking to your experience thus far working with dairies that have been impacted, but really speaking to the dairy producer who is being vigilant in their defense and also being prepared for the what if scenario that they end up with H5N1 on their dairy. And so one of the things we know is that this is being spread by migratory birds. Dairies already are challenged with birds, right? Like, this is nothing new. It's just a whole new layer where these birds can cause a whole different set of problems than in the past. And one of the areas in particular is when we look at waters, and waters can be a source of contamination. So when we're looking at waters, speak to the importance as a potential source for disease spread.
Obviously, birds are communal with the dairy cows. They both share water troughs. The birds fly in. We've seen it on open lots. We've seen it on cross-vent dairies. Water has been a key piece to this, mainly because that's where we see the bird droppings hitting the most, and then cows drinking that. So the secondhand way of getting the virus is that way. We've had a lot of calls with dairymen really looking into what they can do to decrease the risk factor. When we dairied, you put in chlorine, right? And as an example, guys treat with chlorine in the water system and call it good for the most part. But we've had more and more calls of, hey, what can we do to do better to treat and prevent the water for the cows? So to minimize the bacteria going into the cows intake wise. Obviously, cows drink a lot of water every day. And so anything we can do to minimize bacteria is a key way of helping minimize the effect. I don't know if you can do anything really full-fledged to prevent the H5N1, but definitely ways to help minimize the impact it has on the cow itself.
And when we're talking about water and waters, Randy, this falls under sanitation, which is actually your area of specialties with micro as well. So Randy, what's been your role and how have you helped dairies with what you're able to offer?
Interesting on the water treatment systems that we provide. So MWI actually has been working with poultry and swine for a long time with water treatment. So we actually took members of that team, brought them over to our dairy team about 6 months ago. We actually have very knowledgeable people on our team that understand the benefits of what water treatment systems can bring to production animal. So with that, we have technology pieces to be able to dose on a daily basis. So disinfect the water using different chemicals using technology piece that we provide. So essentially we can provide the dosing piece automatically, and we always provide reporting. So you can look at the dosing on a daily basis, and we have monitoring piece that makes sure it's being dosed correctly every day. So that's one way that we're able to provide. So our sanitation team provides that.
So this is where we tie together some monitoring systems on the cow side to actual monitoring systems on the water sanitation side, and be able to provide kind of a multifaceted approach to being proactive in either early detection of disease on the cow side, but also mitigating risk of spread as best as we can on the water side. And you said something interesting, and that was when you were a dairy manager, you knew a little bit about the benefits of something like chlorine for water. What do you know now that you wish you would know if you were still in that dairy management seat?
Good question. What I wish I knew then, which we all know, right? Cows drink a lot of water, and that's a big driving factor in milk production. But the realizing how much actual bacteria that the cows fight on a daily basis through the water, even because we were on open lots. So obviously a lot more bacteria gets entered through an open lot dairy just with the wind blowing dirt, manure into the. So I really wish I knew back then that there's different things that we can do to the water to help drive intakes on cows. So obviously cleaner water, cows like it better, it smells better, they'll drink more of it. Probably one thing is for sure is realizing that we could have done more for the cows to help them really express what their true production capabilities would be.
So you have the ability through some of the technologies from micro to really be an asset and an accelerator for the nutritionist, being able to make some calls to make some changes in the ration quickly so that cows can have ingredients that are dosed at a proper amount in a fast order in order to make sure that rumen keeps going. So speak for a moment to the value that brings to being able to make adjustments quickly.
Even before when I was dairying, like anytime you can make a ration adjustment and make it quickly for whatever need, you're better for it, for sure. It's typically like even before we had a feed ad system, you would wait, you had bulk lactation mineral coming in from whatever mill that you bring it in from, and if you wanted to make a ration change, typically you had to wait 2-3 days till you finish that mineral pack or whatever you want to call it. With the feed ad system, that's what I loved about it as well, is if I wanted to make a change, I could make a change from one morning to the next feeding, right? So if I fed one thing in the morning, I could feed a totally different ration in the afternoon if it called for it, if I wanted to do it that fast, right?
You've been referring to this feed ad system. For producers out there that maybe aren't as familiar with that, just walk us through what is the technology that you're referring to and how does it work?
Yep, so a microfeed ingredient machine, and I'm definitely not the expert. I can just tell you from a dairyman's perspective because I used it. So essentially it's the micro ingredients that you're able to pull away from like a lactating mineral. So essentially anything that's not a high inclusive mineral or a feed ad, you can put through our feed ad system to dose essentially by pin if you wanted to, but by ration. So if I had, for example, like I used different products in my fresh cow ration than I did in my mid-lactation ration. And I didn't have to feed all those feed ads, those micro ingredients to my fresh cows that didn't need to go into my mid-lactation ration. So it gives you the ability to really fine tune your ration to give the correct feed ads to the correct cow, essentially. So you're not overfeeding, you're not blanket feeding the whole herd with a feed ad system. You're actually for different lactations if you need to. That That's the one advantage I really like. But actually, it can pull away vitamins as well. So your vitamin A, D, and E, those feed adds, you can actually microdose those in a microingredient machine. Quite a bit of products that can go through a feed add machine that we dose at a micro level.
So here again, we're bringing together this full circle of offerings that actually are able to share with other dairy producers. And you know what it's like to have been in their seat. So it's the rumination technology, it's the sanitation systems on the water side, and it's also the micro feed add machine that allows you to be able to make these adjustments that can be catered to the specific cows and their needs. And once again, as you've articulated, Randy, we're really looking at these late lactation cows that have a specific need in herds that are starting to show maybe some warning signs or symptoms. And that's to be able to make those ration adjustments real fast that are going to keep their rumen function high. And again, that backs us back to some of the things you talked about earlier with being able to also monitor that on the activity monitoring side, rumination monitoring side, so you can see how those adjustments are making an impact. But then the other side is the dairies that are impacted and are affected by H5N1 and have cows that need some extra treatment. What have you seen as successful? What are dairy producers packing in their arsenal of tools or treatments to be able to help get through H5N1 faster so that they can get to the recovery point, get cows back on track, and get back to as much of a normal as they can on the cow health and production performance side?
No, it's a good question. I could talk about what dairymen are doing as far as cow treatment, really pretty broad, just because every dairy is doing it different, right? Everybody has their own kind of their comfort level of what products they use. But essentially what it boils down to is the dairymen are treating the symptoms, treating whatever makes that cow's rumen feel better, essentially. And whatever product they're comfortable with is what they're using. So anything that helps glycol, the charcoal balls, is anything that helps really that cow feel better and start getting that rumen to continue to be active, because that's what essentially happens is the rumen will shut down. Anything that you can use to keep the rumen active, happy, keep the cow really wanting to keep eating, that's what guys are using. So like I said, obviously very broad, but every dairy producer uses what they're comfortable with, and what they're comfortable with to treat that rumen is what's going to be used. And like I said, a couple of those, what I just talked about, are some of the things that I've seen dairymen use to really fight that battle, treating these cows and trying to get them back going. There's a lot of products out there. So I would just, my thing is talk to your local rep that you buy these things from, and tell them, hey, a lot of them will know what's working. I talked to our local rep that works for us through the MWI side. He'll tell you what's coming off the shelf fast. So that will probably be the best indication of what products to use, is what's being used out there right now. So
you mentioned the importance of supporting the rumen during a time when a cow is off, whether it's H5N1 or anything else that's impacting the herd. But then there's another side of that, and that's this overall side of immune support.
Yeah, definitely. Supporting the immune system is definitely one of the key pieces to helping the cow recover quicker. So anything you can do to strengthen her immune system to fight these viruses, these bacteria. So using different type of feed adds quickly that go into our feed ingredient system to help fight that, whatever feed add, even if it's a temporary feed add, to be able to put into a system and add it quickly to fight that, to help the immune system. That's a big key of what dairymen are able to do right now with this virus.
If you were still in the dairy management seat and you were running a dairy right now, what would you be doing to prepare your team?
You got to fit that hat back on for sure. So just really, I would just be upfront with them, right? Like, hey, this is probably a matter of when, not if. Hopefully it doesn't affect our dairy, but kind of speaking to if I was dairying, right? Just help them understand to be vigilant. If you see a few more cows that are off feed, speak up. That's kind of what I would do, is really pull in the whole team and explain to them what's going on. Talk to them about the symptoms of what this virus is doing on cows, so that way the whole team's vigilant. And just really prepping them if it does happen, what to do through the whole battle that we had with the human side through COVID. We've seen what we need to do to be more cognizant of minimizing the spread, right? So, even on the dairy side, even as people who provide for dairy customers, we're cognizant as well. We try to make sure that when we do come onto the farm, we're as clean as possible, and that's the message that some of the dairymen are providing to their employees as well.
So you'd have your people stacked, and what would your medicine room be stacked with? How would your medicine room be ready for this?
We'd probably have a lot of pallets set up, ready for treatments, right? So all our drenches, all our IV treatments are definitely, I would be preparing and stacking up for that. So that's actually what we're seeing on the dairy industry right now. So guys just really becoming more proactive and bringing in more products just to be prepared.
Now you are in the role to be of service to other dairy managers that are in the seat that you were once in. And so for others out there that are looking to be proactive and make sure that they are ready to mitigate risk as much as they can to prevent the most drastic consequences if H5N1 does become an issue on their dairy. A lot of what we talked about today, a lot of these strategies are actually what you do now and what you offer through Micro. So just tell us a little bit about how Micro has allowed you to be of service to other producers that are looking to be proactive right now.
Yeah, so thankfully I am in a position to help and to provide solutions for them. So a lot of it is just lending ear. So some of my dairy friends, I'll just become the guy that they vent to as well, right?
So we can put your phone number in the show notes. We'll call you Dr. Randy, kind of like Dr. Phil.
There you go. And se habla español, right? So I can speak both languages, 2 languages. So in all seriousness, I feel like my role is talking to dairymen about the solution for them to be more efficient, right? And that's the end goal. We're there to help the customer be profitable, because if they're not profitable, we're not profitable. So that's been our goal, and to allow that profitability to come from technology solutions that make them more efficient, essentially. So that's what I enjoy about this job, is that I feel like I'm still able to help them as a kind of a consultant, right? So really, I enjoy that piece, definitely. My advice would be, as a dairyman, is kind of what I did, right? Talk to your local sales rep, your MWI rep. Some of those reps also know what Micro brings to the table as far as technology piece.
What have you noticed about the way that dairy producers are handling this challenge that they are faced with right now?
What I've seen is really the dairymen are shining right now to me because of how they tackle situations as they arise. They don't get enough credit on handling these type of situations when they do come up, but they do a great job of being preventative and figuring out how to handle these situations quickly as well.
Not only are you offering technology as a pathway to efficiency, but it's really part of an overall strategy for preparedness and risk mitigation as we look at this H5N1 virus and its potential to continue to spread, and its importance for dairy producers to be ready to take action and to be prepared. And so we'll make sure that we have all of the links in the show notes for those out there listening to be able to connect with you, Dr. Randy. That's not DVM. That's like putting you in the Dr. Phil spot.
Hey, that's all right. Like I said, I could do it in both languages, so English or Spanish.
There we go. Bilingual Dr. Phil.
There you go.
But all jokes aside, really to be able to connect dairy producers with solutions so that they can have their med room stocked and they can have the action plan in place and just know their next right step, whether it's right now to be prepared or whether it's positioned to take meaningful and powerful action so that they can get past a challenge faster and help their cows and their people and their teams to be able to do the same for that overall goal of exactly what you talked about. And that's being able to be more efficient, more productive, and at the end of the day, more profitable. So Randy, thank you for sharing your insights, not just on what you know about these different technologies that we've touched on today, whether it be rumination, whether it be sanitation, feed ad, whether it be some of your knowledge on the treatment side, but really being able to put your dairy manager hat back on and speak to the others out there that you've been in their shoes and you know what they're going through and you understand what their challenges are on a daily basis, but especially at a time like this.
I appreciate that you have me for sure, and just glad to be able to help. And like I said, I know don't envy those guys and being in those shoes right now, but I do enjoy being part of the talk and the solution.
Thank you, Randy, for joining us here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast to share your boots on the ground perspective of having helped dairies through the outbreak of H5N1, prepare for it, and also the insights having been a dairy manager yourself. And this episode is brought to you by Microtechnologies. Microtechnologies innovates advanced, comprehensive, and integrated technologies to help dairies produce a safe, wholesome product more efficiently and profitably. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may result from the use of this podcast. And if you'd like more information on Microtechnologies or to contact Randy, be sure to check our show notes. I hope this episode has been helpful in shining some light and offering some strategies as you work to prepare your herds against the H5N1. And once again, I'm Peggy Coffeen. Thank you for joining me on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast.